You know, some of history's biggest lessons come from the most bizarre places imaginable. And today, we're diving into one of the strangest, most tragic events in all of American history. It's a story about corporate greed, a city literally drowned in syrup, and how it all led to safety standards that, believe it or not, protect every single one of us to this day. We're talking about the Great Boston Molasses Flood.
All right, so let's set the scene. The date is January 15th, 1919, and it's one of those weirdly warm winter days in Boston's North End. Now, this is a bustling neighborhood, packed with families, workers, everyone's just going about their day. They have absolutely no idea that a massive 50-foot tall steel tank right in their midst is about to fail in the most catastrophic way you can possibly imagine. And then, at 12:40 in the afternoon, it happens. Witnesses later said they heard this deep, terrifying rumble, a roar, followed by the sound of metal just ripping apart. That was the sound of 2.5 million gallons of molasses being unleashed on the city all at once. Okay, so when that tank failed, it wasn't a leak. It wasn't some slow spill. No. What it created was something way more terrifying. A literal wall of thick, dark syrup. And it started moving with just incredible force. And again, this was not some slow ooze. I want you to picture a tidal wave of molasses, maybe 25 feet high, blasting through the streets at a staggering 35 miles per hour. That's as fast as a galloping horse. Just unbelievable. The force was just immense. The wave hit with so much power, it literally lifted entire buildings right off their foundations and just smashed them into rubble. It buckled the huge steel supports of the elevated railway track overhead. And it instantly swept up anyone and anything that was in its path. And this is what made the flood so uniquely deadly. I mean, you think of syrup as slow, right? But in this sheer quantity, it was a battering ram. And once it finally stopped moving, its density, which is up to 4 times that of water, made it a lethal trap. If you were caught in it, escape was, well, it was nearly impossible.
But the physical destruction? That was just the beginning. The truly heartbreaking part of this story, of course, is the devastating human cost.
The sheer weight and thickness of the molasses was just overwhelming. People were pinned, they were crushed, and tragically, they were smothered. We have these horrible accounts of a firefighter being trapped and drowned, a teamster buried alive. Even children who were just playing nearby were completely overcome. The powerful workhorses in the streets, they were stuck fast, immobilized. Many of them had to be put down right where they stood. The rescue effort that followed was heroic, but an absolute nightmare. You had police, sailors from a nearby ship, nurses, regular people all rushing in to help. But the cold winter air was already causing the molasses to thicken and harden. Every single step was a struggle. It just clung to their boots, their clothes, their tools, making every single life they saved a monumental effort. So after the dead were counted and the months-long cleanup finally began, the fight moved from the sticky streets of Boston into the courtroom. And this would become one of the most significant legal battles of its time. As you'd expect, the victims and their families filed more than 100 lawsuits against the tank's owner, a company called the United States Industrial Alcohol Company. They wanted answers, and more than that, they wanted accountability. Now, the company's defense was, well, it was shocking. They actually tried to blame the disaster on saboteurs. Anarchists, they claimed, must have bombed the tank. But the investigators for the families, they uncovered the real truth. That tank was a disaster waiting to happen. The steel walls were way too thin, the rivets were poor quality, and this is the real kicker. It had never once been properly tested for safety. Not once. So after a 6-year legal battle, the court finally found the company was 100% at fault. The victims and their families were awarded a huge settlement. In today's money, we're talking over $100 million. But the real value of this verdict, it wasn't just about the money. Because what followed this tragedy, what came out of this court case, was a fundamental change in how America approached public safety and construction. The disaster, as absolutely awful as it was, left behind an incredible legacy. That verdict sent a shockwave through the entire industry. The case led directly to new laws that required professional engineers to actually sign off on construction plans. It created requirements for professional structural inspections. What we're really talking about here is the birth of the modern building codes that we all rely on every single day. And the contrast is just stark. Before 1919, a company could throw up a massive structure like this tank with almost no government oversight at all. But after the flood, public safety wasn't optional anymore. It was written into law, demanding that big projects be inspected and approved to protect people. And these lessons have not been forgotten. I mean, to this day, the Great Boston Molasses Flood is a key case study taught in engineering and architecture schools. It is the textbook example of what happens when safety is ignored just to make a quick buck. But as we look at this legacy of safety and all these regulations, it's so important to circle back and remember why those laws were so desperately needed in the first place. We have to remember the people who were lost. 21 people died that day. They were workers, they were firefighters, they were kids. Just families living their lives in the shadow of a tank they had absolutely no reason to believe was a ticking time bomb. If you go to Boston's North End today, there's a small plaque that marks the spot where that tank once stood. It's a quiet but really powerful memorial to the victims, and it's a permanent reminder that their tragedy helped prevent countless others from happening. It really makes you think, doesn't it? The next time you walk into a building or cross a bridge or even ride an elevator, just remember that you're protected by this invisible web of safety regulations. And so many of them were paid for in blood by tragedies just like this one. So it leads us with a final thought. What everyday safety standards do we now take for granted?
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. It really helps us.